This is Daniel speaking for Knowledge Maps as part of the RailSig. This is a relatively new project, so there hasn't been too much progress that has been made on it, and I'm fortunate to be working on this project and trying to take it further this quarter. So I'm going to outline a little bit about my plans this quarter, a little bit about current thoughts I have, and essentially current steps I've been taking, as well as steps I plan on taking over the course of this quarter and some overarching goals that I have. So I'll start with an overarching goal of my project, and I think the main goal of my project is to allow beginners, beginner JavaScript learners, so JavaScript learners who've done some JavaScript coding but want to go to a more professional or advanced level to organize their knowledge together in such a way where they're able to view more complicated and complex and professional examples, organize that knowledge together, and once they've seen and understood how each of those underlying concepts work and work together, they're able to make that connection and apply what they've seen to new examples and to solve new problems. So this kind of is a goal that tackles the general problem. And the general problem is that, well, first off, examples on the professional websites are complex. They're intimidating to new programmers. They seem very hard to programmers who have learned some syntax and know DOM manipulation and know some relatively simpler concepts in JavaScript, but do not know how professional features are implemented. And especially when there are thousands of lines of code, it's kind of intimidating and daunting to face those examples head on to try and see how they possibly work. So part of what I'm trying to solve here, and kind of like a subset, a slice of that problem, is how to get new programmers to learn from professional examples effectively, but specifically trying to allow them to learn by example, to construct their understanding, to view various examples, and once they become familiar with the examples, to keep track of them. It's focused more so on giving them a planner and a tracker that allows them to organize their learning for further use and for further implementation as a problem-solving method for their future problems that may arise in the future. So this contributes to an overarching research question that I seek to explore, which is how can we design a solution where users can easily and seamlessly organize their knowledge together, conceptually or practically, and construct their understanding of JavaScript by grouping the knowledge together and apart from each other. So, this can be comparing, this can be contrasting, this can be bucketing them together, this can be bucketing them, in separate categories, and use this knowledge, use these connections they've made to solve new issues and to tackle new problems in their JavaScript career. And I think the current obstacles, so now we go into, the current situation of my project. So before moving on to UI or interface design, I must first refine my design argument. And part of refining my design argument is to locate pain points and issues current users in the target demographic face. And specifically what I've been focusing on is focusing on issues that they face within the learning process that we're trying to get them to take on as a part of knowledge maps. So first, let me clarify on a couple of things. So the testing demographic that I choose to pursue is advanced or are advanced beginners. And what I mean by this is beginners who have had experience in JavaScript and are aware of functions of JavaScript such as show, hide, scrolling, DOM manipulation, drag and drop, adding state to different divs and components on the web page, etc. Or advanced students in EX330 who are either currently enrolled or have taken EX330, and or students who have built their own website and use JavaScript in their website, and mostly like tying it all together, students who have built some JavaScript project in the process or in the past and want to build something bigger. They want to build something more complex. They want to learn something that's more professionally implemented. So this leads to specific quarter goals that I want to do. So I think this quarter, given that this is a relatively new project, we're going to start with formulating and solidifying, I think more so at this point, design arguments and trying to scope out pain points first of all in present and grouping knowledge together. And this is what I'm currently working on to figure out, since knowledge maps, the key behind it is to learn by association, to learn by moving your concepts and your knowledge together and grouping it together as I went through earlier. So this is not like an approach that all users and learners of JavaScript and even more generally programming go to. They don't necessarily always go to just the go-to approach is not necessarily just to group concepts together. They might, look up API. They might resort to their own learning approach. And I want to see what is difficult about just sitting someone down and bucketing knowledge together. In fact, my past user test that I'm trying to compile feedback for did just that. I sat someone down and tried to get them to bucket knowledge together and figure out, and have them voice to me their difficulty and what they didn't like about it if they didn't like any particular aspect or what was difficult to them. And I hope what this does is this refines my design argument. I'm going to steer clear of usability issues, which I seem to have gotten grounded up on a little bit, especially in Sprint 0 and the first half of Sprint 1. And I want to continuously test and refine these design arguments by locating more pain points should they show up. And once there's enough support and I get a good idea of what common pain points are and how I can solve them, I want to turn the focus then eventually into interface arguments and interface models. So that will be the next step after thinking abstractly and practically about how we can solve the current issues at hand. So, and on the side, it's not all research and just user interface. I also plan on having a technology plan, and my technology plan is mainly to keep up with technology and to learn more of it. So what do I mean by that? So on the side, actually, I've been building a sample user interface, which is based off a model from the Rail research paper itself, just to get my feet wet, to get a good sense of how components are interacting with each other. And this is built mainly with jQuery, HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap at the moment. Although after reading papers on both Isopleth and Ply, I think that it might be a good touch to add knowledge and play around with those two tools, because eventual integrations with those tools could very much be possible should that enhance the user experience. So I go on to ideal outcomes. So ideally, I want my interface to be usable. I want it to be an easy way to organize ideas, but more importantly, I want it to solve the problem at hand, which is to allow new learners to discover connections behind examples rather than just merely listing them together without any thought or relationship to the examples. And I want to accomplish this currently tentatively for the user interface with what I mentioned earlier, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and jQuery UI features that will compose mainly the front end of my application. I haven't thought too much about backend quite yet, but in the future it would be nice to have a backend should this be to make it more scalable for users and to hold and remember data. That will probably involve a database of some sort as well as a server, but we can get to that in the future should a system model start to emerge. So the timeline overall is to figure out issues that users currently have with the current learning model, and to analyze pain points from video feedback, which I'm currently doing actually as the sprint ends. And I want to factor this and update my design canvas as a result. And this is like more specific, right? Like what I want to do this week. And more generally, so lessening our scope, I want to use use the feedback to strengthen my design arguments, to continue testing and focusing in on other issues that might arise, whether this is with the learning process or something more general. And I want to keep up with technology over the remaining weeks, and I want to steer eventually into prototyping the user interface and trying to design a user interface iteratively that will allow users to find it easy to use and effective. So, and ideally I want to get this all done by mid-March when the quarter ends. So I know there's quite a bit going on, but I think that this will be a good challenge and will teach me a lot about both my users, current problems, and a lot about tech. So I think this is great, and this summarizes my quarterly plan, and I hope to get it all complete by the end and reflect on it. So this is it. Thanks.